this experience has really taught me. It's taken me down quite a few notches in a good way, right? Because I had pride, unjustified pride. And I would rather not know the answers and be a seeker than think I have all the answers and be wrong.
Welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. This is a show presented by Heart and Solutions Counseling Agency. We release new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central and encourage you to batch up that laundry, put away the dishes, plan for the week ahead, or do any other task that might seem daunting while you give our show a listen. You might just be encouraged to call your therapist, connect with this week's guest, or seek out those services you've been considering for a while but haven't made the commitment to yet. If you are in the state of Iowa and are in need of mental or behavioral health counseling, give us a call at 1-800-531-4236. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome back to the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions, Mental Health and Behavioral Health Counseling in Iowa.
And I'm Krista Hunt. I am our Vice President in charge of the Behavioral Health Department. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are a podcast designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Our guest today joins us for a part 2. Now, she had been on the podcast 2 times before, came on last week, and we said, oh my gosh, we have so much more we want to hear from you. So we've invited her back for a part 2 of the previous episode. So if you haven't watched that one, go ahead and go back, watch that one, listen to that one, and then come on back to this one. So we've got Holly Bot here with us today. One of our favorite guests, just always so much information, just always so much meaning making when we have Holly on the show. Holly is a IT solutions architect at Bot Consulting and has had so many different life experiences, but we've been talking about incarceration, parenting through incarceration, and the transition from being in incarceration to becoming a counselor now and becoming a certified Christian counselor. So welcome back, Holly. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just really glad to be here.
Wonderful. We love having you here. And so let's jump right in. So last time you were telling us about when you were incarcerated just recently, and you just give us a little background into that in case somebody hasn't listened to the first one, and then we'd love to just hear more. You were telling us about the scriptures on the walls. You were telling us about so many things that we just want to hear all about it.
Yes, so I'm on probation in the state of Minnesota, and I traveled to Florida to visit with my parents for the winter because they're snowbirds. And it was my birthday, and we were going to celebrate it. And I had only been there a couple of days when I was arrested and put in jail. And I ended up being in jail for a couple of months. And I hadn't done anything wrong. And it wasn't personal to me. I guess this county just involved in sweeps. It's kind of a campaign type activity that they do of just regular sweeps and picking up everybody who's on probation and trying to find a reason to hold them. I think it's a lot of things. I think it's a business, it's a money maker, it's a promotion maker, and it's an award winning maker type of thing. So, anyways, I was caught up in all of that and was there for 2 months before I was released and allowed to come back home to Minnesota. So that's what we talked about in the last episode: is how did that come to be? What did that feel like? And and coming home from that.
And I know you had talked last time about how it kind of was like a blessing in disguise in a way where you were able to help so many women that were incarcerated as well, and like how there wasn't a lot of resources there in the jails that you had in
Yeah.
Minnesota. Can you kind of go more into that and how you were able to help them and what kind of resources you were used to having in Minnesota that weren't in Florida?
Yes, I would love to. One of the hardest things about being in the jail there was um, that jail, just so you can kind of picture the story with me, they have several really large rooms, maybe the size of an extremely large gymnasium. And it's one big open room, except for a little shower and a bathroom area. And those don't have doors either, but at least there's a wall. And then everybody sleeps in that room in bunks like along the walls. The center of the room is where there's tables where people eat their meals, but otherwise it's this big open room, just to kind of set the stage. And women there, they don't they don't provide anything but a jail, like a this weird material that jails use, like a linen polyester mix for a top and pants. They don't provide underwear, no bras, no socks. The shirt that they give is short sleeve, and so no t-shirt underneath, no long sleeves, nothing. And I was there in the winter, and because it's Florida, it's not like Minnesota. They aren't used to heating large spaces efficiently, so they just don't. So it was maybe 60 degrees inside, made all the more cold because it's concrete, right? You aren't given things that can help you stay warm. And they also don't give you any hygiene products, no shampoo. They give you a little bar of soap, like what you would get at a hotel. That's the only thing that they give you. And so what women were doing, I noticed, is they were braiding their hair so that it would not need to be washed as often. And some women had money and could buy things other women didn't, and how they'd make money is braiding other people's hair. And they wouldn't even do that for actual money. They would do that for, can I have your dessert if there is one when it's lunchtime if I braid your hair? Well, I didn't need money. But I felt bad for the women who couldn't even pay that to get their hair braided. And so I offered to braid this lady's hair for nothing. And I start to braid it, and her scalp is covered with scabs and open sores and bald spots. And I wondered why that was. I thought at the time I was ignorant. I thought that was just her. But then because I braided her hair for free, many other women wanted their hair braided, and I began to braid many women's hair, and they all had scalps like that. And it was from the neglect. At the prison, when you can't wash your hair for a year, then your hair is going to start to fall out. You're going to have scabs and sores. And so I felt so bad for these women because that's really physically uncomfortable to be like that. And so just the misery at the jail was so intense. And it was so obvious the need for these women to have some source of support and comfort that right away tugged at my heartstrings. And I think I really needed that tug because it's difficult to live in a giant room with a bunch of women, and they aren't a bunch of angels stuck in a room. These are people with behavior issues and challenges in socializing. And so then you need to have that extra reminder of to give them extra grace, and don't treat them as this one instance seems to dictate, but stop and think for a minute and give them a little extra love before you respond. And so that was helpful. But yes, you were asking, or you were mentioning the extra neat things about this experience that were so different from what one might expect. And when I came home from this, people are like, I bet you wish that had never happened. I was like, actually, this was a great experience. And people just gave me this blank look like, what? But, there were so many neat things that happened in our daily lives. Hopefully, for most of us, it's so mundane almost that we don't need Jesus to show up every second and rescue us from something in a really unique experience. We just don't, well, we don't think we need it. And so we don't see it. We don't experience it. And after years of that, we forget it's something that can be experienced. And it kind of gives us a discouraging feeling like help isn't available because we aren't seeing it. So when I was in this jail, I needed a lot of emotional support and a lot of help and a lot of growing. And so that's what I began to experience here in a way you don't normally experience. One of the most interesting first things that happened after the scriptures on the wall, which I mentioned in the last, I get into the general population and everybody has a tablet, like a large smartphone almost, but it's in this durable plastic case. It looks like a gaming system for small children. But I'm sure that's just so it can last, and everybody gets one. And on it were the policies of the jail, the rules, and then a Bible and a couple other things. And then there was a paid entertainment section where, for a certain amount of money per minute, I think it was like 2 cents a minute or something, you can watch videos, a selection they've chosen. There was like 80 on there. And so I went through the whole paid entertainment section looking to see if there's any videos I'd want to watch. I was really looking for overcomer type movies, right? Lift me up out of this, give me an encouraging emotional moment. There was a couple things on there. One of my favorite shows that I was hoping to see on there is The Chosen. It wasn't on there. And The Chosen is just a TV series about the life of Jesus. It wasn't on there. And so okay, maybe I'll watch some of these, but whatever. And a couple of days later, another lady I overheard, she was at a table that she had been watching The Chosen. I was like, where are you seeing that? Because I looked, it's not on there. And another girl says, oh, she's got an app on her tablet that nobody else has. And it's got The Chosen on there. I was like, what? She's had it for a couple weeks, maybe a month, that app on her tablet. Nobody else has this app. So I looked and it's an app like a smartphone, has apps and little icons, and it was like a praying hands icon. She was the only one that had that icon on her tablet. So I went back to my bunk and I started praying. I was like, Jesus, I'm going to need that app. I'm going to need that app right away. And it was bedtime, about bedtime. So I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and the app was on my tablet. I was like, wow, right? So now I'm watching The Chosen and I run around telling everybody, I got the app, I got the app, I prayed this thing, I got the app. So then everybody else was like, let me try that. By the end of the day, everybody had the app on their tablet. Everybody's watching. And what it was is this app was like a Christian version of YouTube almost. There were podcasts and Christian movies, Christian TV shows, music, Christian music, all this kind of stuff, but in like a YouTube format. So all the rest of the day, people are listening to music and it's free. So especially the women who had been there a long time and never got to pay for the entertainment. Now they had thousands of hours of content that they could finally access. And so it was the quietest that room has ever been because everybody's accessing the free content. And it really was high quality content. And so I start watching it too, other things, and I came across this sermon that I watched, and the sermon was about, if you're praying, you should write down what you're praying for. And I thought, that's true. My list is at home. They didn't let me bring that with me. So maybe I should write some things down. And then the sermon also said, pray for impossible things. God is the God of the impossible. Yes, he wants you to have a nice day and all of those things, but we only pray to the measure that we think he can deliver. And if that's all you're asking for, that kind of shows how big you think he is or isn't. So I thought, okay, all right, well, then I'm going to make this list and I'm going to make sure I include big stuff on there. I got to think about what that would be. And I thought I'm going to also pray for the women around me. So I started going to the women near me. I'm explaining what I'm doing. I'm going to make this prayer list. Is there anything I can pray for you for? And they would tell me things. Well, this one lady, she misunderstood. I wouldn't say in a bad way, but she thought we were going to be praying together, that I was coming to her to see what I can pray for her for, and we would do that together. So all day, she is like a child waiting for Christmas. She's talking with all the other inmates. Holly says we're going to pray, and she's going to pray for me. What do you think I should ask for? Like all day, every inmate, I would see her walking in the gym, and she's so excited. What should she ask for? And she's making mental lists, and just like the best day ever for her. So, but I still didn't know. She expected we were going to do this together. So the evening comes, it's time to roll into our bunks, and she comes over to my bed. She says, "Are you ready to pray?" And I was like, "Okay." So she kneels down in front of my bunk and she tells me the things we should pray for, and we do. And other women are like, "What are you doing over there?" She's like, "Holly's praying for me." Okay, well then all the next day, she starts telling people what a wonderful experience this was. She's never felt so much peace since Holly showed up. And listen, I am not a special person, and I'm not trying to walk around like I'm a peace giver. I mean, I would like to be, but I'm not going to pretend, right, to be special. So I'm kind of baffled by this, but I'm glad she's happy. I'm glad she's happy. The next night, several women show up kneeling in front of my bunk. "Are you ready to pray?" I am not starting a Bible study here or a prayer group, but I mean, what do you don't tell people no. Yes, I would love to pray for you and thank you for showing up. And so we start praying. Well, there was other women who didn't want to, they wanted to be prayed for, but it's hard to be vulnerable in a group of people like this. And so they weren't willing to take that step to show up like, "Hey, I need help." So they would watch from their bunks, but pretty soon even they are calling from their bunks, "Don't forget to pray for me, and this is what I want." So it became kind of a neat thing. And many women were skeptical, which is fine. Not sure that this was something that was a real source of help or just a kind of a fun group. So they had this bathroom. It's the left side of the room had a row of, I think, like 8 to 10 toilets. There's no stalls, just toilets in a row attached to the wall. And then there was a wall in front of the toilets, but it was open at either end. They started backing up and overflowing. And so what this jail did to solve this problem was take blankets, bed blankets, wrap them around the base of the toilet. And so now these blankets are absorbing this smell. And I thought they'd just call a plumber. So I'm waiting. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by. Pretty soon the stench is just overpowering in the whole room. And I realized they're not calling a plumber. And so I decided that night I'm praying for a plumber. We need a plumber up in this place. So that's what I pray for at bedtime that night. The next day the plumber shows up. Women started to pay attention, like, "Hey, we can get plumbers in here with this prayer." Well, the beds that they give you are this mattress that mine was like a canoe. It was so squished that it was like this, really uncomfortable. It's just a yoga pad almost for sleeping on. The next day, all the women on the other end of the room got a new mattress. They got their old ones out, they got new ones in. And I was like, "Oh, look at that. You can get a new mattress in here." So that's what I prayed for that night. Is a new mattress for me. And the next morning, I had a new mattress. One of the girls who had gotten one the day before went home. And instead of bringing her mattress out of the room, she asked me if I wanted it. And the guard said that I could have it. And I didn't even approach her. And so I thought this is God showing me and them that this prayer thing really matters. And it was really encouraging. So I write my prayer list, I put all this stuff down, and in the impossible things, here's what I put. Um, in the jail every month, everybody would have I say a court date. Doesn't mean that anything happened on that date. It was just a date on a calendar. And most of the time, what happened is you would go and they would say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're just going to continue your case and we're not going to hear you today." And you'd go back. And that would happen month after month after month. But most of the women that I asked, "What do you want me to pray for you for?" They would all say that I go home on my next court date. Right? That's the next time they get before the judge. They see that as their next opportunity to get out of here. So that almost all of them said that. And I'm learning. Like in Minnesota, we don't get a court date every month. I mean, this is all new stuff for me. So, and I didn't even know what the court dates were going to be about. But my first scheduled court hearing was a month away. It was in March 13th. And so I thought, okay, well, I am going to put on my impossible list that I would like to go home next month. And what I meant but didn't write down was at my next court date. That's what I was thinking. But I just wrote down that I go home next month. So I prayed that every night. March 13th rolls around. I go to my court date, and it's just a hearing where you put in your plea, guilty or not guilty, and then you say whether or not you have an attorney or need one appointed for you. It's like 30 seconds long. And they're like, okay, thanks. Have a nice day. And so I thought, well, I should stop praying that I go home next month because I won't have another hearing till April. So, and it's not like an audible voice that you hear, but it was like a nudge that said, you wrote it, you pray for that. And I was like, okay. I mean, now I'm feeling kind of silly. I did not feel special or powerful or like I was doing some neat thing. I felt kind of dumb, but I kept praying every night. Okay, I'm reading through what I wrote. I pray that I get out this month. And it gets to be towards the end of the month, March 28th, and it's a Friday. And I thought, well, I'm not praying for that anymore because it's the end of the month. It's rolling up on the weekend. And God said, you wrote it, you pray for it. I was like, okay, Saturday, it's the 29th. And I'm like, I'm not praying for this no more. And God was like, no, you're praying for that. Okay. Sunday, I pray for it one more time. And then the guard does something she's never done before. And she decides to tell everybody who has court the next day so that they can be ready to get up in the morning and be ready for court. And she calls my name. And the next day would have been March 31st. And I thought, that's a mistake because I had my hearing this month and nobody's told me and so I thought that was a mistake. But I was called to court the next morning. And when I got to court, I found out all the things I mentioned the last time to you that my probation officer had found out that I was in jail, that they had lied about my probationary status and her supervision of me, and she was very upset about that. And she had met with my lawyer to correct all of those mistakes. And that's what the hearing was about, to get that information in front of the judge. And the judge was so, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he seemed very surprised by all of this and not pleased at all with the state. So he granted bail. And so I did not leave that day but I could have. And so there was that answer to that prayer. The prosecutor at that time decided to meet with my attorney and say, hey, I don't think we can proceed with this to trial like I wanted to. And within a few days, I was released without even needing to pay any bail as a result of that hearing. But that was a wow moment for me because sometimes we think that in order to pray for an impossible thing and that impossible thing to come true, we need to have some sort of special emphasis on that prayer, some special sort of faith or belief. Like we're involved in the process by the intensity of the emotion we bring to the prayer. And that's just not true. We just need to do it, no matter how we feel or what we think is going to happen. It's not about us. So that was interesting to me. During this time as well, I'm not earning money because I'm in the jail, but I did have money in my account and all my bills are paid coming out of my bank account automatically. And God had been teaching me for maybe a year and a half at this point about how he provides. Yes, we are supposed to do work, but he's the one who gives us the ability to work and the opportunity to work, right? And he's ultimately a provider. 2 years ago now, 2.5 years ago now, I had walked away from a very good paying job. And that's when God began to teach me that he provides and that I would still be safe. I had walked away due to, I don't want to say ethical concerns, like make that company look bad, but it was a moral decision, not one of convenience or something like that. And then I couldn't get another job. And so I started my own company, didn't even have any customers, right? But I'm trying to make things happen. And I came across a biography of George Mueller, who was a missionary. Well, he wasn't necessarily a missionary. He was like a pastor in England in the early 1800s. And back then, where he was. How pastors got paid was they rented the pews. And so the expensive pews were in the front. So all the rich people sat in the front of the church, and it was a status symbol. And he's like, this is not biblical at all. Jesus was all about like the poor and the needy, and they need this as much as anybody. They should be up front with everybody. So we're not doing pew rentals anymore. And the people who were advising him were like, you're not going to have any money then because that's your income. He's like, I don't care. We're not doing it. He said, instead, we're just going to have a box off to the side. I'm not even going to tell people to put money in the box. I'm not even going to mention an offering. We're never going to talk about money in that way again. But if people feel led, they can put money in the box. And if I don't get anything, I don't get anything. And he said from now on, and he made this commitment to himself, he would never ask anyone, any human being, for money ever again. And he would never even hint at it. Like he wasn't even going to, he was going to make a determined effort to not look needy, even if he was desperate and hadn't eaten for a week. He wasn't going to let anybody know that's how it was. He was only going to pray. So that's his thing. And then the rest of his biography is this man continued this for the rest of his life. And back then they didn't have government organizations like they have today, orphanages and all of that. And so he founded orphanages. He ended up helping thousands of children. And God provided so much money for him that he even began donating it to missionaries, millions of dollars to other missionaries, all on this. I hesitate to call it a program, but we'll just call it a program of how he decided things would go. So I'm reading this biography and I'm like, and he kept saying in there, I am not special, that you can have this too. I was like, well, what have I got to lose? I'll try it. So God had been teaching me that that is absolutely true. For the first 8 months, 9 months after I left my job, I burned through my 401k and all of my stocks and all of my savings. And it got to be July of 2024. And I had like $100 left in my account. And here August is coming up and the month starts all over again and all my bills start up. And I was like, well, now it's going to get interesting because I got nothing left and I have no prospects. Since that time, I have never had a bill that's been late, ever. God has paid every bill, sometimes in the nick of time. And it's like he's been training me how he wants it paid. I remember the first time my bank account went under. It went under $80. And I had no way to, I had nothing. What am I going to do? So I thought, well, I have a credit card. Maybe what I could do is go and get cash on the ATM from my credit card, put it in my bank account, and we'll just start living on my credit card. The next day, there was, as I was getting ready to go to the bank, I decided to check my account and there was money in it. And so I thought, okay, God doesn't want me using the credit card, right? He solved it another way. A couple of months go by and it goes under again. And so I thought, okay, I still have the credit card, but I'm going to wait and see if this happens again. The weekend goes by, Monday, it's still under. And so I thought, I'm going to wait and see. Listen, I've decided that this house is God's, and if he wants me to live in it, he'll pay for it. Right? This is not my problem. And all these other bills, in fact, I told God, I says, they're all yours now. Everything here is yours. And so if you want the lights on, you're going to have to pay for the lights because they're your lights. The house is yours. The car is yours. If you want to keep the car, you'll have to pay for it. If you don't want the car, I'm not going to argue with you. The car will go away. Right? And so that became very freeing, and I'm not talking about financial irresponsibility. I'm talking about perspective, right? And some things we think we need or have to have, and we're wrong. If you need it or have to have it, you will, including things you maybe don't want, in order to help us grow. So I had been on this journey for a long time, and now I'm in the jail, and I am not worried about my bills because I know God has me in this jail for a reason. As far as I'm concerned, I'm his paid employee and he's going to pay for me to be there. Well, my mom comes to visit. She's not on this page and she's very concerned about all my bills. And so she's asking these types of questions and I'm trying to share with her in a very brief period of time during a jail visit, which is by video. Don't worry, Mom. Everything will be fine. I'm sharing all of this. She doesn't really seem convinced. And especially she was concerned about my mortgage. And so she leaves after that visit of me just like, hey, God's going to provide. Don't worry. She gets in her car to drive home, and my son, my youngest son, Tim, calls her. And he says, my rent is going up next month, and I don't think I want to sign the new lease. Do you think Mom would mind if I just lived in her house while she's not there and paid her mortgage? My mom was so shocked. She almost dropped the phone driving home. And so it was just a way for her to see that what I was telling her was true, that God will pay all the bills. We don't need to orchestrate. Whatever is before you is what you are to do. And if it's not before you and you can't seem to put it in your grasp, it's not yours to do. If you can't make it happen, then it's not yours to make happen, right? It doesn't mean it won't get done, but it's not your task. So that was really nice for other people in my family to start maybe releasing such a stranglehold of fear that they have on finances and wealth and things. I mean, it's totally fine to be wealthy. It's totally fine to be not. It's the attitude of which you approach it, right? And you can be very poor and still have a very bad attitude about money. And you can be wealthy and have a healthy attitude about money. How important is it to you? If you lost everything, would you really think you had lost everything? Right? So that was another a fun experience. And the day that I was going to be released, that the prosecutor had come and made this agreement with my attorney, I had to go up and agree to it officially in court. And I had been, one of the other things that I had on my prayer list was to pray for the women around me. And there were other big rooms like this one in the jail where other women were housed that I had never met. So I'm praying for everyone in the jail that they would look at this new app, that they would start to have some of this emotional freedom that I'm experiencing. It's for everybody. I'm not special, right? So I'm praying that, and we go to the hearing, and when you go, they put you in a holding cell in the courthouse. You wait for your turn to go to court, and then they put you back in a holding cell, and you go as a group from the jail. One at a time, they take you out of this courtroom holding cell and then put you back, and then as a group, you go back to the jail when everybody's had their turn. So I'm in a holding cell with other women. I go in to the courtroom, and then they put me back in a different holding cell where women I'd never met before were in there. And when I walk in, it's clear they had been there for a while, and they were all talking. Well, actually, there was one woman talking, and everybody else was listening. And this woman was saying how Jesus had saved her life, and she meant it quite literally. And she was so amazed. She was telling everybody, like, you've just got to hear this story. And so her story was that she was had been in and out of this jail and jails generally for most of her life. And I think she was like maybe 60 for drugs and other things. And she had come to the point where she was sick of her life, sick of all of it, and she was contemplating suicide and different ways. One of the ways she was contemplating was to let alligators eat her. I mean, this is Florida, so there's alligators, but that was something she was considering. And she was serious. She was very serious. Well, the day she decides she's going to go do that, she got arrested again. I guess she had an outstanding warrant she wasn't aware of. So she's in the jail, but she still has this attitude. And her behavior always in the jail had been to be a very violent person and a dangerous person. So she had a long-standing history at the jail of fighting with other people. So that's why she wasn't in the room that I was in when she came. They have a special big room for people like her, right, that need extra supervision. And true to form, she got in a fight with someone. So she was put in like a solitary confinement cell for like a week, at least a week. And the only thing that she had was a Bible. And she says, I've read it before. In Florida, I don't know how familiar you are with different states and their attitudes. But it's very different from Minnesota. And I'm sure everybody in the world is familiar with Minnesota. There isn't a day that doesn't go by that Minneapolis isn't embarrassing the rest of the country somehow. And so here in Minnesota, you don't ever the general public perception is religion is taboo. Like you don't talk about it, you shouldn't talk about it. It's inappropriate to talk about God. God doesn't exist. We all agree God doesn't exist. And if you think that, keep it to yourself and you're unusual. That's how it is in Minnesota, and it's pervasive. In Florida, it's the opposite. It's presumed that everybody is a Christian, everybody believes in Jesus and God, and you should talk about it or there's something wrong with you. So just a very different culture, even in the United States, in different states. So that's this culture here. So this woman had grown up in this culture. She'd read the Bible many times. And she said this time, when she was reading it in solitary, something different happened. And she couldn't put it down. She couldn't stop reading it. And all of a sudden, she's feeling like this is the actual source of hope that you've been missing all this time. And I don't remember exactly what she said, but it was transformative for her. And all of a sudden, everything she's ever thought, she's challenging as a way of solving problems and a lifestyle. And she no longer wants to kill herself. She is excited about all these things that she's talking about. And so now she wants to tell it to these other women because she's concerned they might be where she was at. And she's feeling this great joy. She's feeling freed from all of that stuff. And she wants them to feel the same way. So she turns to me because I'm the new person and I've only caught the end of this. And she says, "Do you know who Jesus is?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love Jesus." And all of a sudden, she's talking to me like if you two old friends met and you just got to catch up like that. And so, but she's still housed in this other room. So I go back to my general population cell after this and pray for her, right? And the next day, she's transferred into the room that I'm in. And now she can't, just like the other women who keep coming and asking me questions about the Bible and all these other, Christian counseling. These are women in really tough circumstances. And they had questions about what is what does it look like when God does this or that, or, just the hard questions, but also questions about, what, tell me more about the Bible, just generally. So all these people would be coming with questions to me. And she started coming to my bunk with questions for me. And so it was just really neat, the connections that God makes. Whenever you have a problem, God is going to answer that prayer with a person. It's always going to be a person. He is a relational God, and it's about our relationships with others and connections with others, and the support we give them, the support that they give us. And people who are hurting tend to reject relationships with others. They tend to be in isolating or have a hardened shell of invulnerability, right? Which unfortunately has the opposite effect of keeping them from what they really need, which is support and love and help from others. And so it was nice for me because I really needed some uplifting in this difficult time, but also being able to serve for myself. And I think that this is not just me. Whenever I'm having a difficult time, what feels better is focusing on someone else's needs and not my own, and finding a way to serve that person. There's nothing more uplifting than feeling useful, providing, and I don't just mean looking like a hero. I mean, go clean that person's house, right? Or get the groceries for them. Something that no one might even know that you did, that you'll never receive applause from, right? But it takes your mind off of your own problems, right? Because you're focusing on serving someone else in a tangible way. And I was really able to do that in this jail. So I'll just stop there for a minute and see if you have any thoughts or questions. I don't want to monopolize.
Yeah, wow. What I always just love is these things that you've gone through. of losing things that I think that so many of us, we don't even think of as comforts that we're relying on, right? We kind of think of as like baseline things like having a door on a toilet stall, right? Or being able to have a plumber come if we need a plumber. And the idea of saying or being able to have the freedom to work and make money to pay our bills, right? Like um these tend to be, I think, just kind of thought of as like baseline things and not things that might distract from our ability to remove ourselves from the outcomes that we want and need and meeting our own needs. And so we may say uh, yes, I'm letting go of, dependence on myself for certain things. I'm letting go on dependence of on things like a lot of times we think about alcohol or drugs, right? Or cigarettes. I'm letting go of dependence on those things. But when we get down to it, dependence on money, right? Dependence on our job to provide money or our boss to provide the job, right? Dependence um, on these comforts, right? The comfort of privacy, the comfort of being able to go into your room and read and close the door, right? These are comforts that I think it's so easy to take for granted, and in doing that, we're not always recognizing that, hey, that is a comfort that I might have reliance in, and
Mhm.
anything that I have reliance in takes away from my ability to have reliance on either God or my higher power, right? And so I need to be able to, or it's so important, these stories and you sharing your experiences, because when I don't think about things like shampoo as something that I'm putting my reliance on, right? But if I take my reliance off of shampoo, you were forced to stop relying on shampoo.
Mhm.
And so if I take my reliance off of that, whatever reliance and energy I was giving to that thing frees that up
Yeah.
to add to the reliance and dependence that I'm putting in God or in my higher power.
Yeah.
And it's just so important, these messages that you're sharing.
Yes. And what you're saying is really true. I think of so in the jail, there was no privacy even to keep your belongings. So if you did, and they did have a canteen where you could buy snacks or hygiene, shampoo and things, there was no place you could put it where you could prevent others from just taking it from you at all. Like there was no lockbox, there was no storage box, nothing. And so, and I listen, I had money, I am going to buy shampoo, right? Just because other people can't afford it doesn't mean I shouldn't have it if I have money. So I bought the shampoo, but then I thought, how do I protect it? And it wasn't that I wanted to keep people from stealing it because I shared it with people, but it was these are some really needy people, and I didn't want to put out their temptations. Listen, I don't want to remind them of what they can't afford. If they're too shy to ask me for some or anything like that, I still don't want them feeling bad that it's there and they don't, just all these things. I want to be very considerate of other people's feelings. So I put it all under my mattress. And everybody knows it's there because every time I want to get something, I lift my mattress and I get my shampoo out, but it's not always out there as an emotional reminder or a temptation for others. Well, the more that I hide it, the more I start thinking it's mine. And I'm going to be really mad if someone takes it. It's fine if I borrow it out, but I better not come back and find it's not there. And so I had to take a step back and think that, you know what? Again, all this canteen is ultimately God's canteen. He bought it. And how do I know that He didn't use me to acquire it so that someone else could be the owner of it, right? And I'm not promoting theft or anything else, but even sometimes when we make a bad decision, God is letting that happen so we can learn from that mistake. And so there could be all sorts of reasons that someone might take something from me and it's still not the end of the world and I'm fine. And when I got home from jail, I like to buy books. I love books. I love reading books, and I buy them all on Amazon, and they're all delivered to my house. And so I wanted to buy some books when I got home, and like you said, read them in my room with the door shut. And so I got some Christian books on like supernatural stuff. I don't remember what they were. You get a notification from Amazon and a picture that they've hit the front step. And I swear it was like less than 30 minutes before I opened the door and they were gone. They had been stolen. So a porch pirate stole them off my front step. And at first I was really mad. And I told my son, who's still living with me, the one that was, wanting to move in while I was in jail. I told him what happened. He says, well, clearly they need the books more than you do. I was like, yeah, I was thinking when I bought the books that the end game is I read the books. But what if God gave me the money to buy the books because he needed someone else to read them? And the only way the books would get into those persons' hands was if Amazon delivered and I waited 30 minutes to pick it up so they had opportunity to steal it. Like this was the overall plan. And so I buy a lot more books on Kindle now. But I decided to take this in a new direction because I don't know if you've seen, but I've seen many videos of like get the porch pirate and people have like traps on their houses and it's mean. It's mean. Listen, being a thief is mean, but all of that is mean. It's vindictive. It's wrong. I decided instead, I got some Bibles from my church, like extra Bibles, and I started asking people for their Amazon boxes, all different shapes and sizes. I made a printed letter that basically says, I, you know, this is a Bible. This is where maybe you should read it. And I know that you stole this Bible, and that's what you're. Because I put all of this, I like package it like a gift, and then put it in the box. And I left it on my front step until it was stolen. Like every day I'd look out, is it stolen yet? Oh no, not yet. And when the day it was stolen, I was like, yes. Yes, it got stolen. Someone took it. This is great. And I had in there that you think you stole this and it was random, but God chose you for this gift and it is for you. And I hope that it blesses you. And so now I have a whole steal my Bible thing where I have all sorts of boxes. You can't do it too often or they'll stop stealing, which I suppose is a great is a good thing.
It's a win-win, right? What?
It's a win-win. But just reimagining how we think about what it is we're doing and why we're doing it and what we think the outcome should be. And our idea of a great outcome, I mean, it would have been fine if I'd have read those books. I'm sure I would have learned from them. And in fact, I did just get them on Kindle and read them anyways. But how much better that someone else got to read those books, that they made it into the hands of someone who would have never bought them. That's even better than whatever plan I had. I had no business being mad. So
Yeah, that's funny. They're going to learn that you're the house that they should not steal from because it's going to be a Bible in the box. So it kind of worked out. Well, we talked last time too how you had just finished school to be a certified biblical counselor. Can you tell us what your goal and plan is with that now that you've graduated?
yes, I would really love to be available in the prisons and in the jails. As a counselor, there's a real shortage of counselors in these areas. And just recently, in fact, this month, Minnesota revised their spiritual care policies for the prisons in Minnesota and really opened up, saying that I was shocked when I read this, but the policy now states not that it's a privilege to get these resources, but that it's a right. And that the rest of the policies based on that mentality is ways to make every opportunity for these things to be available for the inmates as a right. And I read that and I was just shocked, but it's wonderful. And so I really hope that the outcome of, I mean, policies are not processes, right? They open the way for processes to be made within the boundary of that policy. So I hope that processes that come out of there is the ability for counselors to apply and make themselves available and for the prison to make space available for these things to happen, whether it's by Zoom, which they're actually starting to do like telehealth sessions, even in treatment within the prisons because they just don't have space for treatment to hold it inpatient and things like that, or they don't have office space for the people they'd like to hire to do the treatment. So it's being done by telehealth and stuff. But I'm really exploring opportunities that way to bring these services to the people that I really relate to the most. Yeah, yeah. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I don't know how it will turn out. A year and a half ago, the DOC approached me. Someone who works at the DOC had approached me and said they were putting a committee together of formerly incarcerated people for the purpose of revising policies and in a way that, let's ask people who've been inside, did this policy help you or did it make no sense at all? Is it a pointless policy? Just getting some of that feedback for that purpose. And then another purpose was to do some of the things I just said, which is be available within the prisons as a peer support and as a mentor, not someone who just pops in for an hour in the visiting room or something, but to be in the prison, to be able to take walks with the inmates. And not even just for the purpose of we have an appointment today, let's walk during our appointment, but just to like hang out at the prison and be someone who's not staff that's there often at the prison to model what it looks like to normalize successful reentry. And this is what it looks like. And for inmates to see that you can get out and still be respected by the community enough to come in and be a mentor to others who are still going through it. So they reached out to me for that and invited me to be a part of this group. And then they had me fill out paperwork for the DOC to make an exception for me because I'm still on probation. So I would need an exception to be a volunteer or a contractor, anybody who comes further than the visiting room. And I filled out all that paperwork and then nothing happened. Like they didn't even process all of our applications. I don't know what the bottleneck was, but it's been a year and a half. And I occasionally check up and really there's no movement on it. So that's something that, I didn't come to them. They came to me. I don't know what will be the end of it, but I'm hoping that a program like what they started to implement and that it seems the spiritual care policy is also paving the way for it, that those two things will come together and maybe something new and different will happen in the Minnesota prisons where, we can really be available as a friend, to come alongside. Some of the greatest help is not scheduled help. It's just people who are emotionally available and who have a flexible schedule that can make time. And so one of the commodities, the provisions, we were talking about financial provisions, and one of the things I had a problem with was being a workaholic. Busy, busy, busy. I saw worth and personal worth and value as how busy I am at productive things. And if I could fit, 24 hours worth of stuff in a day, every moment I would be busy and I would be so proud of how busy and tired I am. But I realized that made me completely unavailable to love on people and to help people. I had accumulated all sorts of resources and no time to help other people with the resources I was generating. And so I made a determined effort that I'm going to have whole parts of my day and even whole days and even whole weeks where I've got nothing serious scheduled. So if someone else has an emergency, I'm available. If nothing happened that week, big deal. It was still a good week. And so I would like to take that mentality into my counseling and how I approach it. And, just hanging out at the prison for the day without a set schedule of who's going to come and talk to me and just being available to on the spot talking. I just see that as a real opportunity to help people. So I'm excited about things like that.
Wow. And it's, when you talk about how things are supposed to be and the frustrations that we have when we think it's supposed to go one way, what a beautiful example of that, because you were approached with this idea, kind of got you thinking, and then there was a bottleneck. And I can see where that would be frustrating. Like, hey, what's going on, right? What's happening with this? Am I supposed to do something? Should I push this forward? And being able to say, nope, that's not my project, right? That's not my project. If I'm supposed to be involved with that, I will be, and if I'm not supposed to be involved with it, I won't be. And then having this experience where you were put back into a jail situation, to be able to have these insights now. So if that does come down the road, right, then you've got so much more experience now, with what that actually felt like when you were living there for those 2 months.
Yep.
And you've got this great experience that is going to help with that process if that's what's supposed to happen. So I love that, because yeah, maybe that is why it wasn't moving forward yet, right? This needed to happen first,
Yeah,
for you to have that experience to go into it.
I think so. I think that we can only give to others what we ourselves have. And that doesn't just, education is a part of it for sure, but it's also experience. And when you want to help people with problems and successfully overcome them, if you've never had a problem or a serious problem, then it's hard to pour into somebody else uh, what they might need to overcome those things. And, you know, when I was in that jail, and we've talked about how, what that could have looked like, what other outcomes could have been. One thing that was so comforting to me was, first of all, being married, so I'm not going through it alone, but the fact that, um, my husband is incarcerated and he knows I have been incarcerated in the past. So if I'm incarcerated again, he was not worried about me. Holly can handle herself. She knows how to do time. And I don't think any other husband or type of relationship could have flourished in that type of stressful environment. And and yet I didn't feel any fear. In fact, I felt extra support. Oh, look, I'm doing time like my husband is again. I wonder how this will turn out. And so every everything that we're given, our relationships and the people's lives that we intersect with, it's all for our good, right? And I often get questioned like, why would you marry someone who's incarcerated? Or what they really mean is, what does that person have to offer? And I thought to myself during that time, no one else could have offered the kind of support I needed as a wife than someone who is incarcerated or who has been. And I don't have to explain how this might be unfair. They know. If you've been incarcerated, you know it can be unfair, and I don't need to make that case. You can just support me. And someone who is incarcerated knows all the ways to support someone else who's incarcerated. They just need to think, what would I want? And how to get that done, where from the outside, it's a big bureaucracy and a tangle. And they might want to help, but what are the avenues for doing that? And so, uh, in so many ways, I think my husband would make a great counselor of people as well. But I wanted to mention all of that too, because I think that we really get stuck in what's normal or what's traditional and see that as the highest form of value, and everything else is somehow lesser. And I'm sure there are many people living non-traditional lives I'm not familiar with, but I don't want to make the mistake anymore, like a self-righteous attitude of I know best, and if you live differently from me, you're not as good as me, or whatever. This experience has really taught me. It's taken me down quite a few notches in a good way, right? Because I had pride, unjustified pride, and I would rather not know the answers and be a seeker than think I have all the answers and be wrong. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we could talk to you forever. But if you are listening and you want to know more about Holly's story, she does have her new book out, From Surviving to Living, and we'll link her website in our show notes. You can access that as well. And then she also has her podcast. Oh, there it is on the camera. And she also has her podcast, From Surviving to Living Podcast Chronicles. So if you are interested in hearing more from Holly, you can look up both of those.
I'm Holly Bot, and I need a counselor.
And I'm Krista Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Need a Counselor podcast. We are so grateful that you're here. You can also find and connect with You Need a Counselor on Facebook and Instagram. If you've enjoyed today's show, please take a moment to like, review, or leave a comment, as all of these things help others to find and benefit from the podcast as well. If you're in the state of Iowa and interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health intervention services, give us